Okay, everyone. So I wanted to have a discussion with you guys about a theory that I've had for a while now. And I think it's definitely interesting enough to at least make a video where I just discuss this with you guys. And if you saw the title of the video, you know what it is that I am going to discuss with you guys here in this video, which is the possibility of both of Hidari and Ryu actually managing to accomplish their goal of absorbing their targets, that being Sarada and Ada. Now, before we get into the actual discussion part of the video where we, go over this theory, let me just get something out of the way real quick. I know that there is a chance that some people are going to listen to this video, specifically the part about Sarada being absorbed by Hidari, and think that this may possibly come from a Sarada hater. I just want to clarify, I am not a Sarada hater. While I wouldn't say that I am a big fan of her character, I don't hate the character. I think the character is fine. And I just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay, this is not coming from a Sarada hater. This is just a theory that I've had for a while, and I just thought it was interesting enough to sit down and actually make a video about it. And I just wanted to discuss this with you guys and possibly, get your thoughts on it. What do you think about it? Do you think, this would make the story interesting, or do you just completely disagree with it? Whatever your thoughts are, just let me know about them in the comment section down below, as always. So now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and discuss this theory. So in the next arc, we know that Mamushi is on his way to Konoha to absorb his target, that being Ada. Now, when it comes to Mamushi, it is going to be very interesting because in chapter 23, we did see in one of the futures that Kashin Koji saw was Mamushi using some type of cloning ability. So I am curious that when we do get Mamushi eventually going there to absorb Ada, to see him actually display what his ability actually is, because we've seen with the other Awakened Shinju what their abilities actually are. Excuse me. With Hidari, we saw him, of course, using Sasuke's abilities, which makes sense since he was made using Sasuke's chakra. But we also saw him using the claw mark, something that he apparently inherited from Code when he used his chakra to essentially start creating the claw grinds. Now, with Ryu, of course, it was him using Shinki's iron sand, and with Matsuri, it was her using essentially a form of wood style, which she inherited from Moegi. Because for anyone who may have forgotten, Moegi is a natural-born wood style user. So we know with all of them what their abilities actually are, and now we have a chance to find out what Mamushi's ability actually is. I know some people may think that it's him being able to modify his body, but that's not the case. Every Awakened Shinju that we have seen has that ability. And yeah, I'm just really curious to see what his ability actually is, whether it really is like a type of cloning ability. So we'll see when that happens. But I wanted to discuss the possibility of him actually absorbing Ada. What are the possibilities of that actually happening? Well, in all honesty, I'm not putting that much stock into it because the thing is, we haven't seen the story be kind to the Awakened Shinju and essentially allowing them to actually get a win. Every time we've seen them go up against the heroes of the story, they've always lost. And while this current arc, this upcoming arc, could actually show them getting a win, I'm not getting my hopes up that high because I'm starting to think that this is not really that type of series where the villains actually manage to get a victory over the good guys, or at least if it does, it's very rare. And I'm just not all that convinced it's going to happen. Obviously, I could be wrong. We will see. But let's talk about what would happen if he actually does succeed. First of all, in order for that to happen, obviously he would have to go through Damon. And if that is indeed what happens, if we do get a fight between Mamushi and Damon, is it possible that we are going to see Damon actually using his full power for the first time? Now, the story seemed like it was setting up a moment, a fight between Boruto and Damon, where that's where we see Damon use his full power for the first time. But this would actually be a nice subversion of that setup where we instead see Damon using his full power against Mamushi, and it would make sense in that context. If he believes that his sister is being threatened against this monster, then it would make sense for him to use his full power, because obviously he cares about Ada's safety. So it would make sense for him to use it. But the thing is, what would happen if he used his full power and it still wasn't enough to stop Mamushi? It still resulted in him absorbing Ada, and then we actually get to see what happens as a result of that, because that's something that the series definitely does need to show us. It needs to show us what happens when these awakened Shinju actually manage to accomplish their goal of absorbing their target. So with Mamushi, it's Ada, and with Hidari, it's Sarada, which we'll get to Hidari in a moment. But for now, let's just focus on Mamushi. So if he does manage to absorb Ada, let's say what happens when they do absorb their target is, number one, they gain access to all of their abilities. So just like how they have access to the abilities of the people they were made from, when they absorb someone, they also gain access to their abilities. Sort of like what we got from Cell in Dragon Ball. And since Boruto is very clearly influenced by Dragon Ball, I would not be surprised if this is something else that Ikimoto chooses to essentially pay homage to when it comes to what happened in the Dragon Ball manga. So with Cell, when he absorbed the androids, or excuse me, the cyborgs, 17 and 18, he also gained their abilities. So when he absorbed 17, he gained access to 17's force field ability. Now, to be fair, 17 wasn't the only one who had that ability. Like, anyone in the series could create a force field. They could learn to do that. But 17 had a very specific type of force field, and we did see Cell use that later on in the series. So is it possible that in Boruto, when for example, when Mamushi, if he does manage to absorb Ada, he also gains access to her ability, which, if you think about it, that would actually be very advantageous for the awakened Shinju, because if Mamushi gains access to Ada's Senrigan ability, then Jura and the other awakened Shinju would gain access to a very useful technique, because with the Senrigan, Mamushi would be able to see everything that Ada saw in the past, meaning he would find out about Kashin Koji and he would relay that information to Jura, and Jura would find out that, oh, this is how they know so much about it. This is how Boruto has essentially been one step ahead of us, all this time, because he's literally had someone essentially give him spoilers for the story. And with the Senrigan ability, he would be able to locate where Kashin Koji actually is, and immediately he could tell Jura where he is, and they could go there immediately. Essentially, there would be no place for Kashin Koji to actually hide in, with the exception of him. Or actually, no, sorry. I was going to say with the exception of him going to another dimension, but that's not even true, because Ada could still see you even if you are in another dimension. The only time Ada couldn't see you is if you essentially have Kawaki's ability to use Sukune Kona and shrink yourself down to 1 inch in size. That's the only time where she couldn't see you. But other than that, wherever you are, wherever dimension you're in, she can and will find you. So if Mamushi gains access to Ada's Senrigan, then essentially Kashin Koji, wherever he goes, he is not safe. And he essentially would be able to find Kashin Koji, tell Jura where he is, and then Jura will immediately go there, and Jura will either kill him, or he could do what Mamushi did, which is absorb Kashin Koji, and Jura could possibly gain access to Kashin Koji's 10 directions, which would be another thing that would be in the awakened Shinju's benefit. So imagine if Jura gains access to 10 directions and he could see all these possible futures. Essentially, it would be game over for them. So just because of that, I think it's possible that it's not going to happen, because if Jura does gain 10 directions, or if that is indeed what happens when an awakened Shinju absorbs someone, they actually gain access to their abilities. And if Jura gains access to 10 directions, then it would essentially be game over. Like, the story would have to come up with a very good reason why Jura just didn't immediately win when he gains the ability to see every possible future. So they would have to come up with a very good reason why the good guys still managed to win at the end, if that is indeed where the story is headed, and if that is indeed what happens. So now let's jump over to Hidari and Sarada, right? So when it comes to this is a little bit more interesting. First of all, let me just get this out of the way again for anyone out there who thinks that I'm crazy or whatever. Let me just clarify something. I highly, highly doubt that this would actually happen. Okay, the chances of this happening are, and I'm being generous here, like maybe 1% to 2%. Okay, I know that the chances of this happening are low because Sarada is the main female character of the story. So I'm not expecting this to actually happen. Again, this is just a fun theory discussion video. So let me just make that clear and get it out of the way, okay? Now, if let's say the story does indeed have Hidari absorb Sarada and him actually accomplishing her goal, whether it's in this arc or in the next arc. Now, we do know... Okay, sorry, I just had to step away for a minute. Anyway, as I was saying, we know from some of the futures that Kashin Koji saw that there is apparently going to be some type of interaction between Sarada and Hidari. Now, I personally believe that that interaction is not going to go the way I think a lot of people believe it will. While I do think there will be another fight between Hidari and Sarada, I think, and this is me talking about in terms of the actual story, not in terms of this hypothetical. I think that is going to probably not going to go the way people think. I don't know. That's just the feeling that I'm getting just from seeing that. I think that it's not going to be another fight where one of them ends up, dead, most likely, Hidari, and then, they get the Thorn Soul and free Sasuke and all that. I think that that's probably going to end differently than people think it will, because I still have the feeling that something different is going to happen with Hidari, and it's not going to be the same as what we saw with Matsuri and Ryu. There is definitely something being planned with Hidari. We have seen too much, I guess you could say, evidence of something going on with him from the story, especially after he was revived from being destroyed. You know what I mean? Again, if you don't believe me, go back and look at every moment of Hidari ever since he has been resurrected by Jura, after he was destroyed by Boruto's Rasengan Uzuhiko, and then later on Kawaki's Chakra Blast at like point blank range. Just go back and look at him every single time since that happened, and you'll see what I mean. Something's definitely being set up with him. But back to the theory. Let's say that Hidari does face off against Sarada, and Hidari does indeed absorb her, okay? Let's see what happens if the story actually does indeed to go through with that. Number one, if you do that, then you are basically telling us, the audience, that no one is safe from being written off from the story. You know what I mean? Like the story has already written off Naruto and Sasuke, which I would argue are still the two most popular characters in the story. And yet they wrote them off. Now they're not dead, but they have been removed from the story. If they do that with Sarada, who is again the main female character of the story, then that will really hammer home that, things are going bad if the writers are willing to write off one of the main characters. And think about what would happen again to Hidari if it is indeed true that when the awakened Shinju absorbs their target, they gain access to their memories and their chakra. Or we know they gain access to their chakra, but we also know that in the Naruto universe, chakra contains memories. So if he gains access to Sarada's memories, he'll also gain access to some of her memories of Sasuke. And since he knows he was made from Sasuke, and he did say in the fight when he went to Konoha that he is wondering who Sasuke is and why people keep asking him about Sasuke, then this could be a way to help him figure out who Sasuke is. And it would also go a way to help him figure out his identity or his purpose, which we know is essentially what they're doing with Hidari. So if he does indeed absorb Sarada, and if he does gain her memories, which would include her memories of Sasuke, then that would be a way to help with that. But if he also gains access to Sarada's abilities, then that would also, again, essentially make Hidari more dangerous than he already was. He was already pretty dangerous. If he gains access to Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan ability, then that would, again, be a big advantage to the Awakened Shinju. And again, it would essentially hammer the message home to us, the readers, that the heroes are in a way kind of screwed, because if Mamushi gains if Mamushi accomplishes his goal of absorbing Ada and gains all of her abilities, and if Hidari absorbs Sarada and gains all of her abilities, then Jura and his team have essentially won two very big advantages when it comes to this fight for survival between the Awakened Shinju and humanity. And I just think that personally, if again it does go in this direction, it would make the story a bit more interesting. Now, again, just to clarify, I think the chances of this happening are very, very low. And one other reason that I do want to talk about as to why I think this could be good for the story is because think about it like this, right? When it comes to Sasuke, specifically or more importantly, when it comes to the main character of Boruto, right? Boruto, he, up until this point, has essentially shown us that he has tried to essentially stay calm no matter what life keeps throwing at him. Especially recently, he had omnipotence that made everyone in the world forget who he actually is. It's turned the entire world against him. All the stress that comes from that. He's got friends and family hunting him down, wanting him dead. The village that he at one point risked his life to save and protect, at one point literally giving up his life to protect. Now everyone in it wants to chase him and they want to kill him. And not only that, but again, even his own friend, this is even worse, his own friends see him as an enemy. And not only that, but the guy that he considers to be a brother essentially sealed away his parents, so now he can't even see them. And that person is also trying to kill him. So you take all of that, and then imagine if you add onto it the stress from knowing that you failed in your promise to your master, the guy who gave his life up to save you, the guy who fought against what was stated to be the Shinjutsu among Shinjutsu, probably the most broken ability we've seen in the entire Naruto series. The ability to literally rewrite reality, at least as far as we know in people's minds. Then he managed to fight against that, to honor the wishes of his daughter, and essentially take you under his wing to teach you, to protect you, to train you in essentially learning his ways. He did all of that and then gave up his life to save you. And all he asked in return was for you to save his own daughter. He trusted you with the safety of his own child, and you end up failing. You fail, and you didn't just fail by not protecting her, but think about it like this. You failed in protecting her from someone who is using the power of the man who essentially entrusted you with that person's safety. Okay, think about it like this. Think about it. If Hidari, someone who's using Sasuke's chakra, manages to, at least as far as Boruto knows, kills Sarada, again, the person that you swore to protect, to your master, think about the kind of stress that would do to Boruto. Like, that would possibly break him, and then that could lead to something that was hinted at in Boruto Naruto Next Generations. I think it was chapter 68 or 69, one of them, where Momoshiki told Boruto once and for all, when that moment comes, the moment when you break under all the pressure and you just don't want to deal with anything anymore, that's when I will take over, and that's when I am going to start wrecking everyone's shit, and I'm going to finally accomplish my goal of growing the chakra fruit from this planet and then essentially leaving the planet to die, and I will continue to live on as you. That could be what leads to that moment happening. Sarada being absorbed by Hidari, again, a monster made from the chakra of the man you made the promise to, that could be what pushes Boruto over the edge and brings Momoshiki back. Someone that a lot of people have wanted to come back for a while. Personally, for me, I couldn't care less. If I'm being honest, like if the story moves forward and we never see Momoshiki again, I will be absolutely fine because I've made this no secret. I am not a fan of Momoshiki's character. I've never liked the guy. So honestly, if we never see that fucker again, I will be 100% happy. But I know a lot of people really do want to see him. A lot of people want to see him be brought back into the story. And I do think the story is going to bring him back at some point. It would be weird if it didn't. But like I said, just personally for me, if we never see him again, I will be absolutely happy. I will see no problem with that. I'm not going to complain. But I do think, again, he will come back because the story is clearly setting him up to be brought back. We're seeing too many hints of that happening for it not to happen. But yeah, that could be, again, something that would be very interesting to see. But not only that, again, it would go a ways to help us find out what happens when the awakened Shinju absorb their target. Now, something else that I will say, which is that, okay, if let's say this does happen, let's say if Ada and Sarada do get absorbed by Mamushi and Hidari, okay, let's say that does indeed happen. Does this mean that those characters have been written out of the story permanently? I'm going to say no, because just like how I said it's like what happened with Cell when he absorbed 17 and 18, remember what happened with 17 and 18, specifically with 18. When Cell absorbed 18 and accomplished his perfect form, and a lot of us thought that, well, that's it. 18 has been absorbed. She's out of the story permanently. What happened when we got to the fight between Cell and Gohan? Gohan managed to beat Cell down to the point where he essentially had his energy levels get low enough to the point where he couldn't maintain his perfect form anymore. What ended up happening? He spat out 18. 18 was back. She was alive. It could be the same with the awakened Shinju. And this isn't just in a way honoring, taking inspiration from what happened in Dragon Ball. This is something that has already happened in the Naruto universe. If you remember with Sasuke, which again, it would be poetic if this did happen in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex with a clone made using Sasuke's chakra. Think about this for a minute, all right? Just humor me. Think about how poetic it would be if Hidari, a Ten Tails clone made from Sasuke, were to absorb Sarada and, gain all the advantages that comes with that, whether it's gaining more humanity, more techniques, more strength, whatever it is. And then later on in the story is going up against Boruto or whoever it is. It doesn't matter who it is. Let's say, just for argument's sake, let's say he goes up against Jura, for example, again, just for example, and Jura manages to push Hidari to the point where his chakra levels get so low that he ends up once again spitting out Sarada because he doesn't have the chakra to keep her, essentially contained in him anymore. Whatever happens to them when they absorb someone. Again, just like what happened when Cell absorbed 18, right? And not only that, it would be essentially mirroring what happened with Sasuke when he went up against Itachi. Remember what happened there? He went up against Itachi. Itachi, as we find out later on, was all part of his plan, got Sasuke to use up most of his chakra to the point that Orochimaru was able to take over, because as we found out earlier in the story, when Orochimaru tried to absorb Sasuke reversed the technique back at him and he absorbed Orochimaru, and he gained, of course, all of the powers and benefits of having Orochimaru absorbed. He got all of his abilities along with him, all of his chakra, which essentially all of his stats were enhanced. But then when he got to his fight with Itachi, his chakra levels got low to the point where he couldn't keep Orochimaru maintained anymore. And then Orochimaru came back out. So imagine if in 2 Blue Vortex we get the same, but with Hidari, where he absorbs Sarada, but then in, let's say, some future fight, again, let's say, for example, against Jura, he fights against him for whatever reason, and Jura pushes Hidari to the point where his chakra levels get too low, where his chakra levels get to the point where he can't keep Sarada contained anymore, and Sarada essentially gets released. Like he has to release her because he couldn't do it anymore, and then he essentially reverts back to how he was before, he absorbed Sarada. And it could be something mirror. Again, it doesn't have to happen exactly like that, but it could be something like that. And again, same with Mamushi and Ada. If they push them to the point where they can't keep, the person they absorb contained inside them anymore, and then they get released, and that could be a way to bring the character back into the story. So in a way, you've essentially accomplished multiple things. You've shown us the awakened Shinji actually accomplishing their goal. What happens when they accomplish their goal? You put the fear in the readers that, okay, this is actually pretty serious. The heroes need to shape up because they've suffered a pretty big loss. You've changed the dynamic of the story, and you've actually introduced actual stakes. And and then later on, of course, you bring the characters back because Naruto has done that before. They've brought characters back who have died at one point. They've come back later on, so it wouldn't really be anything new for the story. And yeah, I just think that, again, if the story does indeed go in this direction, then it could be something very interesting that I think, might actually be pretty, interesting for readers to experience. But once again, before I end this video, I just want to clarify, I think the odds of this happening are very, very low. Okay, I do not expect this to happen in any way, shape, or form. Or even if it does happen, I don't think it's going to happen exactly as I said it. This is just, again, a fun discussion, a fun topic. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. And yeah, this video is long enough. Whatever your thoughts are, like I said, just let me know about them in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, which if you did, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I would really appreciate it if you could, hit the like button, share this video out there, subscribe if you are new, and let me know if you want more of these types of videos because I actually do enjoy making them. And I hope I'll see you guys for my next video, whatever that ends up being. Bye for now.